Premier Sim Gaming League is one of the fastest, if not the fastest, F1 sim racing league on the planet, where I've moved from F8 to F6 in just under a year, even winning my own driver's championship in the process. Now, I'm curious to see what my pace would be like in the new F1 game. And this year, there's a total of 16 tiers instead of the usual 10, which means the competition is going to be crazy. How well can I stack up against the other 800 sweats in time trial? And how well can I qualify inside of PSGL? Let's find out. This year's sign-up process includes 3 distinct tracks: Belgium, Suzuka, and Spain. 2 of these are historically my worst tracks. However, this also means there's infinite potential for improvement. Let's start with Belgium, shall we? Belgium is one of the longest tracks on the calendar, which means the gaps between the top talents and us plebs are usually a lot bigger, because there's more corners and places where they can gap us. But not me. Not this year, because last year's signups also featured Belgium as one of the tracks to grind in time trial. There's quite a few places on this track where you can find a lot of time. The camel straight is super important. How you set up your exit out of turn 1 will determine your entire sector time for the first sector. Since you need low wings for the long straights, the corners on this track become much more challenging than a regular track. There's only one line that works through the S's in sector 2, and the fast chicane at the end of it. The bus stop is one of the harshest braking zones in the game, going from 340 kilometers per hour down to second gear and getting the car rotated just the right amount to set up a good exit up to the finish line. This section could literally make or break your lap. 1 minute 42.763 is where our little adventure began, and I will show you exactly how I managed to find more than a full second and ultimately push my name up to the 182nd place on the leaderboard. Now, if you've been following me for quite a while, then you know I like it raw. Legend says that Formula Kai started playing his first F1 games with all assists turned off right from the bat. And I absolutely love these first 2 laps where you try to feel your way around the track. See what lines work, which lines don't. Testing different brake shapes and throttle techniques, it's a big part of what makes sim racing so fun. Trying different things to see what the car can do, it's a bond the driver develops with the car, and it's quite beautiful. Of course, there are moments where I wish I wasn't running as high a force feedback, but after just a dozen laps, we were well within a second of the world record holder. 1 minute 41.947. But in case you haven't noticed, towards the end of that lap, I lost 2 full tenths coming out of the last corner. Very frustrating, but also very promising, because I know the ceiling can be so much higher, and we are just getting started. And it only takes a couple of laps before I find the right line through the bus stop chicane and bring the time further down to a 1 minute 41.843. But we gotta go even lower, and my final lap time might just shock you. The next few laps were quite painful, as much physically as they were emotionally. It absolutely sucked to do everything right, but then lose it all because of one single mistake. It's been about 50 laps now, and things are starting to look pretty good. I'm getting more and more confident on the brakes, especially in the second sector. I can brake closer and closer to this line on the ground, and I carry very good speed mid-corner, but I compromise my exit a little bit because of that. This is what's so tricky, carrying the right amount of speed, but knowing when and where to hit the apex. Knowing when to push the car and when to nurture it is super important. That's something that I've started to understand more and more. Did I also mention that the bus stop has stolen so many of my laps now? To the bus stop once more. A little hesitation on turn-in and a little wide over the inside curve, which delays the full throttle up towards the line. Nevertheless, we improve. The lap time is now 1 minute 41.773. And I knew in my heart there must be another 2 tenths at least in there. Even just through those 2 corners we saw earlier, there's at least a 10th guaranteed. By simply staying more to the right through the chicane to open up the left-hander, and by getting a good exit out of sector 2 and out of the final corner, I managed to find all the time we had previously lost. Time is now a 1 minute 41.634, and even that lap was still not perfect. And there's one thing I noticed that could give us even more time. I noticed that sometimes when I hit it just right, the exit out of turn 1 and the way I cut through Eau Rouge and Radion could gain me close to a 10th down the camel straight. But once you get to the S's, this is where it gets complicated, because you could do everything right up until that point, but lose it all in an instant. Same thing for this downhill left. Very easy to bottom out on the inside and outside curb, and very easy to go too wide on exit. And this is where it gets harder and harder to improve, because hooking everything together perfectly is hard. Very, very hard. And after about 50 laps at this point, I was starting to lose my will to live. However, we do manage to cross the line with a 1 minute 41.619. Only 200ths of improvement. Huh. No matter how small, we celebrate that win. And this is where it gets even harder and harder. Our racing lines are already quite refined. That's not to say they're perfect, because if they were, then I wouldn't be racing here. I'll be racing for an esports team. But the lines I'm driving are quite close to the limit of what my current driving capabilities allow me to achieve. But as a driver, it is your duty to look into those fallacies and weaknesses that are holding you back and work on overcoming these plateaus, which is basically one of the main reasons why I made this channel in the first place, to share what I've learned along this journey with all of you guys. If I were a robot, this would be much easier. But where would all the fun be? It could bring a full 10th into the start of the second sector, then lose it just a few corners later. You could get a really shit sector 1, but then have a great second one. But since you messed up your inputs coming out of turn 1, that whole lap is a bust. I must have driven in total close to 100 laps at Belgium before I pulled together this following lap. After a pixel-perfect cut of Radion and Eau Rouge, we bring over a 10th into the second sector. A little hesitation through the fast chicane that cost us a lot of time. But a more optimized line through Blanchimont brings us back into the game. And through the bus stop, third gear on entry for more minimum speed, and downshift to second for more acceleration potential on the exit. And up towards the line, yes! It is a 1 minute 41.554.
Let's go! Oh my god.
And you could just see how happy I was to finally put a lap like that together, because my body couldn't handle more of Belgium. And in the end, we're only 6/10ths away from Otis Lawrence. But we have to get a move on, because the deadline for the signups is fast approaching, and we still have 2 more tracks to go through. Next track up, Suzuka. With only a few days to go before the deadline, we're gonna have to play this one close to the chest. Right away, Sector 1 is already causing me a lot of trouble, and I mean a lot of trouble. Did I already mention that this was a track that I was unfamiliar with? That, combined with the chronic understeer from this goddamn time trial setup, means any mistake is deadly around Suzuka. Still, we're making progress. Rapidly, I was down to a 27.6 and then a 27.4 after just 12 laps. And that number does not include the amount of resets we had to do. Mamma mia.
Why did the sign-up have to be in Japan?
But we cannot give up now. We already made such good progress at Belgium, and now we have to keep up the momentum through Suzuka. But here's the thing with Suzuka. Since there's so many long straights, you need a setup with low wings. And if you want that setup to stick in the corners, then you need a car with a lot of understeer. The result is a big piece of shit that does not turn in the corners. And realistically, there's only one line that works through the entire S's. You turn in a little too late and you miss the turn in for the next corner. You turn in a little too early and hit the curb at the wrong angle, spin. You try to get on the gas a little too early and clip the grass on the outside, you spin. After about 20 or so laps, I still wasn't making progress. And at this point, I was still well over a second behind the world record in time trial. I needed to bring in the big guns. Ferrari esports engineer Christian Block. And he gave me a really good breakdown of the first sector at Suzuka.
This was fine. And then here you want to open it up more to the right. Apply a bit less throttle and open it up than what you did now, because you will just go straight, because yeah, look, boom, grass.
Right.
The idea is to go for a late apex for pretty much the entirety of Sector 1, so that you can really set up the exit onto the next long left-hander. But a little better than that.
You were gonna improve by definitely a 10.
Like I saw the delta green, like from the corner of my eye. I was like, oh, yo, this is it. I just kept it floored.
And I kept
Basically,
going at it.
One's already over. Yeah, that's good.
Again.
And it was too early.
Again.
No.
And again.
Why?
But to combat the chronic understeer, we also thought about reducing the maximum wheel rotation allowed in the game.
Look, it's fucking turns.
And it seemed to actually work.
Okay.
Who would have guessed?
Did you see your delta?
And we had no idea whether this was a placebo effect or it was actually what was holding me back.
So when do we go to 270?
Though it certainly helps, it doesn't make the track any more fun to drive. But I was slowly getting more and more confident in Sector 1. The lines were starting to fall together. It took another day of grinding relentlessly to put together this lap. Decent out of Degner 2. We'll go a little deep into the hairpin, but the exit is very good. Slight hesitation on throttle, but we still gained. Another easy 10th gained into spoon curve. Purple Sector 2 coming through 130R, but I make a crucial mistake into the last chicane and it spits me out, losing a full 10th. Still, we have improved, but there's still so much time on the table. There's at least a 10th in Sector 1, another through Degner 2 and hairpin, and one full 10th into the final chicane. If we can hook those up, plus a little magic, a sub 1 minute 27 lap is possible here. And my theory would prove to hold true right after I start hitting apexes. Out of Sector 1, we gain a full 10th, more even, and I'm starting to get it, but then I lose it all coming out of Degner 2. This is also where I learned that you can flick and be much more aggressive on throttle through spoon and use the throttle of the car to rotate on corner exit. And a few laps later, even though we are 1/10 down going through 130R, I know there's time in the final chicane, so I'm absolutely going to yeet the car, and would you look at that, a full 10th in the green coming out of the final corner. That means we gain more than 2 tenths into the final chicane. That's fucking crazy to me. Even with the mistake out of Degner 2 and being down on the delta going into the third sector, we still managed to improve. The time is now at 1 minute 27.2, and I believe our theoretical personal best is right under the 27-second mark. If I can just hit everything right in the first sector again and hook it up in the second half of the lap, just like I did a little earlier, we can all go home happy. But that proved much more challenging than I initially thought. And it only took a few more laps before I got Degner 2 right, and I hit the hairpin beautifully as well, and I bring all that extra time that I've gained into the final chicane where I pussy out and lose half a tenth. Not bad, but it could be better, because in case you haven't noticed, going into Degner 2, we were a 10th down once again, meaning our Sector 1 could be miles better, but this is where I hit a wall. For some reason, I just couldn't get Degner 2 right anymore. No matter how I tried to take it, I just keep messing it up. This is where I learned you can take Degner 2 in third gear and it's much more consistent and helps so much more with rotation. But then we lose it all again because of a bad exit out of the final corner. Please, Lord, have mercy. But I was starting to lose my mind. It was starting to get to me. This track is slowly starting to make me lose the will to live. Luckily, I had some outside help, and this is where the stars aligned together. Coming out of Sector 1, we are in the green, only half a tenth up, but an absolutely insane last chicane saved my ass. In the end, we're still a tiny bit slow on our Suzuka lap time compared to all the other tracks, but we've managed to gain half a second compared to where we first started, and that's something to be proud of. We are 6 tenths away from the world record on both tracks, Belgium and Suzuka. And Spain is a very high-speed track, so I'm very curious to see where I would end up. And since we've already raced on this track in the Creator Series, I already have a solid baseline. Or so I thought, because we will still find 4 tenths in total. And here's where we can find time. Turn 1, turn 4, turn 7, and the last corner. Because I'm about to find out that you can actually cut this inside curb to gain even more time. Going fast is not the problem here. Being consistent is. And to hook up every single corner on this track feels virtually impossible. But with the deadline virtually only 1 day away, we have to move fast. And already, we're gonna start improving rapidly. But like I said, that's not the hardest part on this track. And after just a dozen sort of laps, we've already managed to find 2 tenths since I last touched this track during the Creator Series weekend. A 12.0 is what we're working with. But turn 1 was still not perfect, because on the next lap, I was already a 10th up. That's right, Christian. But this downhill braking zone into a hairpin is oh so difficult. But I wasn't going to give up so easily. I will break into the 111s no matter what it takes. But all it takes is one tiny error. You release the brakes a little too soon and it's game over. Next, let me present to you my other best friend, turn 7. I don't know what it is about it. I just don't like the look of it. The inside sausage curb has a nasty tendency of just throwing you out. And the curb on the exit is also really bad for your health. But here's the thing. Same as Belgium and Suzuka. I'd get one sector really right, but then I'd mess up the second one. I'd really mess up the first sector, but then nail the second one. There was no in between. It was painful, but we were still making progress. And the theoretical was going lower and lower. And the next thing you know, I was well in the 1 minute 11. But I'm still not satisfied, and I kept pushing until I struck gold. Out of turn 1, I already had a pretty good delta, and up this long right-hander into turn 3, we maintained good minimum speed. Into the final sector, this is looking really good. But if you've ever been in these shoes before, then you know the pressure is immense when you are improving like this. And we missed by a tiny amount the inside curb out of the last corner. But still, we have managed to improve, and our lap time is a 1 minute 11.884. Yet, on the last day of PSGL signups, there was still time in the lap. We were a full 10th in the green after the first sector and a half, and I managed to keep most of it for the rest of the lap. But now, out of the final corner, we missed the apex by a country mile. And unfortunately, that is a 1 minute 11.8. But we have run out of time. All that is left now is to find out where we have placed.
Okay. Let's see. Ooh, you'll be banned for 22 weeks. Okay. F16 for PC. 16 tiers. Holy shit. Where am I gonna be? F12, please. No. Where am I? Okay, at least not F10. F8? Where the fuck am I? Oh, F7. Formula Kai. Same tier as Tom 97? Will Gibson as a reserve driver?
Of course, I wish I could have been in F6 again or even F5, but progress is not always linear, and that's okay. There are quite a few ex-F3 or F4 drivers and even an ex-esports challenger driver in the mix. And this is shaping up to be a great season, and you don't want to miss out on any of my upcoming league races. Are you racing in PSGL this year? If so, which division are you in? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, the best way to support me is to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is Formula Kai signing off, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.